peach, Babcock peach. And if you notice here, the roots are, it doesn't have roots growing this way. It has them growing here and here, to the left and the right. So to the south, to the north, to the east, but no west, none coming out to the west. Ideally, you want to balance all directions, but the branch structure looks good. This tree right here has good branch distribution. Whoever selected this selected a good one. That's why it's here. This means they've already been purchased.
Okay guys, I wanted to make this video on selecting good bare root stock trees, and that's an example of a okay root structure. But the three main things you want to look for is good root structure, good branch structure, and no scars or damage to the trunk, especially lower down near the root crown. The root crown is right where the roots come up and meet the trunk. That's an important area. The root crown, you want to be planted level or slightly elevated from the grade when you go to plant that. And that right there, folks, is an example of a good tree with good branch distribution. It's nice and balanced. It's got good branch structure. That's a nice one.
Okay, this guy wants to pick a Fuji apple. So we'll look for one that has, what I don't like is when they have a severe topping. Ideally, I like to find a tree that hasn't been topped, and that's hard to find. Like, for instance, one that hasn't been heavily topped, like this one right here. This one almost hasn't been topped, but one that has good branch structure, like that you can develop into leader branches to become leaders. This one has good branch structure on one side. This one's not too bad. All these are put in here real tight. Like, for instance, this one right here doesn't have any branches on this side that my fingers are on. No branches on this side.
So shall I pick this one?
Let's look at a couple. You want a Fuji, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, so this guy was like in a really big rush. He was in a hurry to grab a tree. He was planning on just coming in, grabbing a tree, and taking off. So I'm like trying to hurry up and find it. I like to spend more time and look at all the trees and select the best branch structure. And anyways, this is obviously about bare root stock trees, this video.
They're pretty good. This one I don't like at all. Look at that. There's no branches on one side.
Yeah.
Right down this whole side, nothing.
So shall I pick this one?
Yeah,
This one or
that's
this
probably
one? Which one?
This one's pretty nice too. This is a Fuji.
Yeah.
But then there's also the root structure. I wish we could see the root structure.
Shall I pick this up?
Yeah, let's see what the root structure looks like on that one. Here it goes. Oh boy. Poor thing. Well, that's about as best as you can get nowadays, huh? This is the nectarine right here.
This is the nectarine.
Oh, okay, this one. This one has pretty good branch structure. I mean, root structure. It's got roots going out this way. But it's funny how all these trees in here, they're sort of on two planes. They have the roots growing.
You can see how the root system grew in almost like they were growing in some kind of a slot. They're just growing like in a flat plane, not three-dimensionally out, the four cardinal directions. I mean, I guess nowadays that's about as good as you can get because the way they harvest them with these machines that cut the roots off.
This is where they put trees that have already been sold and they're just holding them. And people are going to come and pick them up. And this tree right here is a good example of a good selection, whoever selected it. I mean, I really like the branch distribution. I'm trying to get it so the background you can see better. See, if I stand on this side, you got and there's so many branches of other trees around here, it's hard.
Okay, in this nursery, there's so many branches of trees everywhere. I'm trying to get the right photo angle so that you can see the branch distribution and the branch structure. I'm kind of picky. This tree is really nice. This is like the best. This is an O. Henry peach. And I talked to the nursery worker later on who picked this tree out, one of the head nursery workers there. And this tree is a good example of what you want to shoot for. It's got branches growing out, you know, all the directions, north, south, east, and west. If you use that as a reference point, you know, a theoretical north, south, east, and west for, you know, radially, growing out radially from the center, out, balanced with the branches growing up and out diagonally at angles, right? See that? They're growing up and away. That's what you want. I'm just really picky, so this is a good example of what you want to shoot for. You don't always get something like this, but this guy picked like the best O. Henry peach for a customer and put it in the waiting area. And you can see the soil here. They're using potting soil. I've been to different nurseries. Every place does it different. Some places will have them sitting there with wet cloth on them or wet newspaper, and some of them will have the bare root trees in sand. And some places will have them in the shade and sand. This place puts them in potting soil, and you can lift them out and look at the root structure and, you know, carefully put them back in if it's not right for you. But okay, now on these pear trees right here, here's a good example of a tree that has pretty good branch distribution. And you want good branch distribution, not just so that the fruit grows on all sides of the tree, but you want the tree to have a good shade. You want it to be able to shade itself. When you get a tree that has no branches on one side, that side's going to get scorched.
The three things you want to look for is good branch structure, like that O. Henry peach I was showing you guys, good branch structure. See, here's a tree that has really poor branch structure. It has a massive leader limb growing out on one side only, and then nothing on this side. Except there's something way up here, but it's I mean, if it's all you had, you could make do, but...
Oh, I kind of went off on a tangent because as soon as I started talking about branch structure, I didn't finish my 3 points, which is good branch structure, good root structure, and no damage to the trunk, especially down low. You'll see something that looks like damage where the graft is, but you want to be able to differentiate that from an actual scar, and I'll show that here in a sec.
These Warren pears. This thing has good branch structure starting out low, and it hasn't been severely topped. The other thing there's 3 things you want to look for: good branch structure, good root structure, which we can only find out by lifting one of these out of the ground, and no scars or wounds on the trunk. Especially, you want to see if the graft took well, or the graft has been taking well, and compartmentalizing, and that there's no scars or wounds. Like, here's an example of a scar right here. See that scar right there?
And sometimes it's hard to go to nurseries and find ones that aren't scarred up, but if you do end up with one with a scar, you definitely want to like maybe put some interior latex paint, white, on it, or something to protect it. Make sure it's not in the direct sunlight. And you know, one other thing I wanted to point out was that when you take your tree and take it home and plant it, if it's a young bare root stock tree like this, it's better to just let it grow for a year or 2, or sometimes even 3, and don't do any pruning to it. Just let the branches grow and leaf out. Harvest the fruit off of it when they're young, because you don't want the heavy fruit weighing thin branches down and breaking them, because that happens sometimes. Sometimes you'll have a really nice branch, you're like, oh, I got a nice branch right here, this is going to develop into a good branch, and then you have all this heavy fruit growing on it and it'll break it. So the first 1 or 2 or 3 years, at least 1 year, harvest the fruit off. People are so... And what I mean by harvest the fruit off is don't wait until the fruit gets big. Take the fruit off when it's small, when it's just little green developing fruit. Take it off. You don't want it to grow up and become big and weigh the branch down when you have a young, freshly planted tree. You want it to have the first few years to grow and just photosynthesize and develop strong branch structure and, you know, make itself healthy and strong. But take that fruit off when it's young and small so it doesn't develop and become heavy, fully mature fruit.
Topped pretty bad.
Yeah.
See, this one right here has really good root structure. Here's the crown right here. This one is above the crown slightly, that one, but That one's well balanced. It's got branches, roots growing out all different directions, downward, and they're nice and large. Nice, thanks, man.
Yeah. So I ran into the nursery worker that actually selected that really good O. Henry peach, and I asked him if I could see the root structure, and he said sure. He pulled it out of the ground and showed me the root structure. It has really good root structure here. I'm just really picky, but I mean, this is probably one of the best ones in the whole selection of O. Henry peaches, and that's what you want to try to shoot for. So what were the three things? Good branch structure, good root structure, and no scars to the trunk, especially down near the base. All right, you guys. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes people make when they go home and plant their tree is they bury the trunk down in the ground. You don't want any of the trunk part down in the ground. You just want the roots in the ground. If anything, you want it to be slightly elevated with a slight mound. That's what I always do, especially if you have really clay soil. That's the root crown right there. So if the root crown, you want the root crown level with the grade or slightly elevated. And 90% of the time, homeowners will sink their tree down into a hole. And that hole will pool water around it. And then the water just sits there at the base of the tree, and that rots the trunk out. So you want the root crown to be slightly elevated, but you don't want the sun shining on the roots. So you got to keep it covered with some potting soil or something, sand. I don't like the whole thing that's popular now of people putting wood chips all around their tree when it's young. When it's older and established, yes, put wood chips all around the root system, the drip line area. But stacking up wood chips right up against the base of the tree, I think it induces rot, personally. I think it's better to have some kind of soil that drains well, like potting soil or some kind of sandy, loamy soil. Kind of like the soil that the nursery's using here. And I'm just going to close with a clip of this tree because this one has the best branch structure in the nursery that I saw. This is what you want to shoot for.